The Hyundai i30 Sedan has had a facelift and it's back with a new model. It now comes in hybrid form. How does it stack up? Let's find out. Good afternoon and welcome to Four Wheels and a Seat. I'm Alex Dalrymple. You found your way to my channel where I review new cars every week. And if you don't know which way to turn, you're looking for a new car to buy, I might be able to help you out with an easy to understand, straightforward review. You don't want to miss an episode though, so please do hit the subscribe button down below, the notification bell, and if you enjoy the video, please do give me a like. When the i30 Sedan hit the market a few years ago, I thought it was one of the best looking sedans of any shape on the road. It just looked so utterly different to everything else on the market, including the conservatively styled i30 hatchback, which of course is not really related to this car at all. And this new facelift, to be honest, I'm not really sure it improves the looks. But to be fair, this is an entry-level model and it is missing a few nice bits of bling on the outside of the car which really lift its look. So there is that. So looking from the front, this car looks like it's sitting lower to the ground than it used to. It's a very low nose, but I think it looks pretty good. They've gotten rid of the shell-shaped front grille, which I rather liked, and replaced it with this sort of two-tiered arrangement. The headlights look pretty good too. There's a nod to the Sonata with the front of the car. There's no actual full-width LED here like you see in that car, but instead we've got a metallic strip across the middle to just sort of suggest the same sort of design language. Side on, and you can see that there are some similarities to the Sonata. It looks just similar design language, but just kind of shrunken down a little bit. One thing I don't love though in this entry-level spec though are the wheels, and the larger 18s and 19s you get in the N line and the N look much better with this car. At the back, we've got some light clusters that aren't LED. We don't also get that full width LED light. That's saved for the upper spec models. The boot has a 458 litre storage space, and that's pretty good. Space saver spare tyre under the floor. Maddeningly, Hyundai seem to have removed a lot of the detailed technical information about this car from their website, so I've had to do a little bit of Googling. So fingers crossed all of this information is correct, I'm pretty sure it is. Under the bonnet is a 4-cylinder 1.6 litre petrol engine mated to an electric engine, and it outputs 105 kilowatts of power and 265 newton meters of torque, which is a fair amount of go. Power goes to the front wheels only via a 6-speed dual clutch transmission, and fuel economy clocks in at a very efficient 3.9 litres per 100 kilometres on a combined cycle. The interior of this car is also slightly different to the upper spec cars, although it is very similar in its overall design. The most notable difference being the 8-inch center console screen that is running a different version yet again of the Hyundai infotainment system. I think this must be about the 5th version I've seen of it in as many years, and it is pretty pared back. There's not a lot going on here. Everything is basically steering you towards using wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. There's no digital radio and there's also no native navigation. The picture from the screen is quite sharp and it's very responsive. Interestingly, the screen has a matte finish rather than sort of a typical glass kind of finish that you get on your mobile phone. So that's a little bit different. I think that probably dulls the image slightly, but it's a pretty good screen. The row of shortcut buttons that normally sits along the waistline here is missing in this car. Instead, we've got a few shortcut buttons just up here next to the screen. Climate controls, very simple, very easy to use, and nice that they run completely separately from the center screen. We've got USB-A and USB-C charging in this car, plus wireless phone charging, and this is actually pretty well spec'd for a car at this price point. A lot of similar cars from other car makers don't include that, but it's nice that it's here. The gear shifter I love in this car. It's a big old school sort of T shape, and it's great to grab onto and just use and throw around. It's a lot more fun to use than the sort of slightly dainty gear shifter you get in the upper spec models. The cup holders here have a cool feature too. You can actually change the size of them depending on the size of your cups by just lifting out the insert here and turning it around and pushing it down, and boom, suddenly you've got a lot more room. Center console bin, it's good size. The digital instrument cluster in front of the driver has been ported over from the Sportage, or at least that's the only other place that I've seen this particular version of it, but it's not digital in the normal sense that we think of it. There are two 7-segment LED dials here that read out your speed and the engine revs, and a small LED display screen in the middle which you can rotate through a few different pieces of information. The steering wheel, I don't love this steering wheel. It's leather appointed and feels nice, but there's just something a little bit weird about this design. I prefer the wheel that's found in the Sonata and some of the electric Hyundais over this one. The seats are fabric. There's no electric adjustment or heating. You've got to step up a model for that, but they're pretty comfortable. No lumbar support though, unfortunately. I do miss that. Visibility, pretty good. Look, the bonnet does drop away to a very low point, as I mentioned before, so I can't really see the front corners of the car that well, but visibility everywhere else is pretty good. No blind spot monitors in the wing mirrors either. That's something to be aware of, and there's no blind spot camera on there either, so you will have to turn your head to check the blind spot. And I seem to be saying this about every Hyundai on the market though, but it is true, they beep incessantly at all the wrong times. Okay, so at the moment, the speed limit is 70, I'm doing 54, the car thinks the speed limit is 40 because that was the last speed sign it detected back when we were going through some road work there. So it just beeps at me thinking I'm driving too fast when I'm not, and you can't turn the system off, and it drives me crazy. It also beeps whenever you change into a different speed zone, and I just wish it would shut up. There's no nice way to put that, unfortunately. I appreciate that it is an important safety feature, but my God, it drives me nuts. Overall, it doesn't feel perhaps quite as refined as, say, a hybrid from Toyota. Toyota have been doing hybrids for the better part of a quarter of a century, so they do them pretty much better than anybody else, and I think that's still true. This is really, really good and really smooth, especially with the dual clutch transmission. You really don't notice it switching between the electric motor and the petrol motor, except for the fact that the petrol motor can be quite noisy when it is at high revs, and it will kind of leap in there and you'll suddenly hear all this noise. Otherwise, the driving experience, it's pretty much indistinguishable between electric and petrol power. So the electric motor in this car will pretty much run by itself until you hit around about sort of 30-ish kilometers per hour, and then the petrol engine kicks in. And there is a lot of go. It drives really well. I did not expect this car to perform as well as it does, but you put your foot down and it just takes off. It's not like a full electric car. It's not sort of Tesla Model 3 quick, but it is really good. Is it a turn-back car? A car so good looking that you have to turn back and look at it once you've parked it? As I said at the top, I've always really liked the design of the i30 Sedan. I think though, unfortunately, this is probably the least good-looking version of it they have yet made. It really does miss out on having things like a spoiler and a body kit on the bottom, and the wheels are just too small. So in this guise, no, it is not a turn-back car. If it's an i30 N-line or above, yes, most definitely. All i30 sedans come with a full set of Hyundai Sense safety equipment, which includes forward collision alert, high beam assist, and driver attention warning. This car also comes with front and rear parking sensors. No top-down 360 view parking camera though, but there is a graphical representation of the parking sensors that comes up on the screen when you put the car in reverse. Materials in the cabin, not surprisingly, entry-level model, lots of hard plastic, although up here on top of the dash it is a little bit softer, but it does get harder the further you move south. Here on the doors we've got some rather harsh fabric, and the gear shifter and the steering wheel are leather appointed. There is also a 6-speaker sound system, and that's all I'm going to say about that. So apart from when the petrol motor kicks in and it gets a bit noisy with those high revs, it is really quiet in the cabin. Although this car does emit a certain amount of fake electric noise to the outside world so that people know you're nearby. It's a bit harder to sneak up on people without them knowing that you're there. Which does sound a little bit sort of sci-fi, futuristic, mechanical, but it's not obtrusive. You get used to it. Now, for those who don't know, the i30 Sedan is only known as the i30 Sedan in Australia, and in the rest of the world it's called an Elantra, and it's a completely different car to the i30 hatchback. Now, a cynical person might say that Hyundai Australia have got their thumb on the scales trying to inflate i30 sales numbers by having two completely different cars with the same name. But I'm not cynical, so I wouldn't say that. The i30 Sedan Hybrid does a really good job of being practical, efficient transport for around town, but in keeping the costs down to around $36,000, they have taken some kit off here that really means this car is missing a certain X factor. So for me personally, I think I'm either going to have to pay a bit extra and step up to an N-line or wait until a higher spec version of the Hybrid comes out.